Trader Howie Roseman did not show up at the deadline for the first time in a long time. Was it the right decision to sit on their hands at the trade deadline? We'll get into that and more coming up right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. I'm Louis DiBiase, joined as always by Gino Camilleri. We're brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNFL, which is in all capital letters, for $20 off your first purchase. The NFL trade deadline has come and gone, and Gino, as you mentioned, pushing the deadline back really helped for more activity across the league. We've been calling for that for years on this podcast, but there was no activity from Howie Roseman, and that is, I would say, very surprising. I think we were both kind of on the same page that they don't really need anything. And this isn't like last year where they have to add a safety. Thank God they got Kevin Byard. Even though it didn't work out, that logic made sense. Like, I don't think anything on paper, there was a hole they had to fill to make this run in 2024. But I will say I am shocked. Like, Howie Roseman always likes to make trades, and especially considering how much activity there was, I felt like he was getting FOMO just watching everybody else make moves. But I think he actually made the right call by just sitting on his hands today.
There have only been 7 teams during this season that have not been involved in a trade, and the Eagles are one of them.
Well, I mean, again, in fairness, he made like 1,000 trades in the offseason. He broke the record for most trades during the draft. And you got to remember Dotson right before the season was kind of that deadline-like move. So, but that is kind of crazy. Your tweet on our account of the Green Goblin, like mask calling him a coward, that was literally Howie's phone to a T. I really thought at least one small move was coming.
It always tends to happen that he wants to get in on the action, but today he kind of sat back and watched things play out. And in my opinion, in your opinion, I think we both agreed on this. Sitting still and not moving more assets because of the personnel that you have in the building with the young players that you have, there isn't an Advil type of addition that's just going to like cure a headache for the Eagles. I don't think there is a headache really to cure. A lot of people, you were getting in this discussion, the edge rusher position. Why were we so apt to go out and want to add an edge rusher? I think this group is fine right now. And the edge rushers that were moved, do they really move the needle for you a ton? Zadarius Smith, we know kind of what he is in his career. Preston Smith, the same exact thing. But this isn't a Kevin Byard edition, an older veteran. It's not a Golden Tate where he's not going to be here the next year. What the Eagles are setting up is the future by sticking with the present, because you have to let these young guys play, and they've done a really good job at that. And I think, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say, if you trade for a Zadarius Smith, it's not going to substantially upgrade your edge group compared to, because if that guy now comes into the lineup, snaps are being taken away from a Bryce Huff or a Nolan Smith. And I would do that if you get Myles Garrett or Max Crosby, but it's not worth putting a rental in there to steal snaps from a younger player when the upgrade really isn't that significant, and they lead the league in sacks since the bye week.
I'm happy with the state of the personnel. I think Howie Roseman clearly is happy with the state of the personnel. And if you're upset that the defense didn't make a move, Vic Fangio has been telling you for 2 weeks that he is fine with what he has in the building.
And you should be too. They are the best defense in the league over the last month.
On offense, that's one of the positions where it was like, are we going to see a move at tight end? Well, we did. Albert O was released at 4 p.m.
I still don't believe he existed.
Of our imagination.
I don't think Albert O was real, Gino. I don't think we've once even said his. We didn't even take the time to learn the man's last name on this podcast.
No, and apparently the Eagles aren't going to keep him around. That would probably mean Dallas Goedert is close to coming back, and they probably are going to sign E.J. Jenkins for the time being, I would assume, because they have that open raw. Well, no, he was technically on the IR.
Correct.
His 21-day practice window was coming to a close, so then they released him. So we'll have to figure out the tight end situation. But right now, the guys in the building, this is it. These are the reinforcements, man. And I'm happy. Looking at the trades around the league, there wasn't one when I'm like, oh, they kind of missed the boat on that one. I think
no, not at
all of the moves the teams kind of had to make, which if you're looking at the Eagles and saying they don't have to make a move, maybe we're actually in a really good position that we didn't have to panic and maybe overspend on a Golden Tate type of trade. And Jahan Dotson is a completely different conversation, but that's an offseason trade. You trade more to keep 2 years of that contract, a 3rd-round pick at the end of the day. I'm not going to get too befuddled about it, I would say. I think they're in a really good spot as long as A.J. Brown was healthy. That was probably the biggest takeaway from the last couple of days is, are you going to have wide receiver 1? And they got the horses right now, man. Let them run.
Yeah. And again, I think it was killing Howie watching all these deals be made around the league. But it's kind of like what we talked about Nick Sirianni on Sunday. You don't want to be aggressive just for the sake of being aggressive. Like, it has to make sense, or it's not aggressive, it's reckless. And again, would it have been reckless if Howie gave up a conditional 6th or 7th round pick for an edge rusher today? No. But it wouldn't have made much sense. Like, maybe if you only had 2 or 3 guys in this rotation and they were struggling, yeah, an Azeez Ojulari would make some sense, or a Zadarius Smith. But when you bring in this player, you're throwing him into a group that already has 4 guys, a 5th that I want to see on the field in Jalix Hunt. So just do the math. Somebody's going to have reduced snaps. And again, I think it's just kind of a wash taking Bryce Huff off the field or Brandon Graham and putting one of these mid-tier guys that were available on the field instead. It wouldn't have made much sense from a snap count perspective. And again, the Eagles lead the league in sacks over the last 4 games. Josh Sweat is cooking. He has 5 sacks, 2 this past Sunday. The Nolan Smith breakouts here. Bryce Huff, I think, quietly has been very good the last month, and same with Brandon Graham. So I just don't understand. It was kind of like the Justin Simmons safety talk in the summer. I didn't understand the edge discourse that's been just flooding my stream, or I should say, X account for the last week and a half.
I think we're quick to forget, and probably because it was a forgettable move, that this team, I would say, recklessly gave up a 4th-round pick for Robert Quinn a couple years ago. And he didn't do anything. Coming into this building, it was like they were already set at that position. It was almost a luxury addition. And people kept saying you can never have too many of these guys. You can never have too many of these.
I hate when
Well, you
people say
can,
that.
because you can only have 53 guys on a
Yes.
roster. And frankly, you have enough guys at that position.
And there's only so many snaps, in a game, and I don't want to take snaps away from anybody that's in that rotation
and
right
people
now.
were
There's not enough snaps for Jalix Hunt. I mean, what are we going to do,
They were saying, are we going to move Bryce Huff out of what? He was only out of that game because he had a hand injury.
Yeah, and are we giving
Howie
Roseman
Roseman
how he's going to
it.
give up on
Nick
that
said
move
it. Vic
already?
said, there's no conspiracy theory. He was injured, and he
almost got a big sack, by the way, in the second half. And even, Gino, if Huff was terrible and he was kind of a scratch on Sunday, which, like you said, was not the case, do you really think Howie Roseman's already going to bail on that move 8 games in? No way.
I like him more than I think a lot of the outside does. I think you are starting to come around to Bryce Huff.
I don't think he's Hassan Reddick's replacement, but I think he's slowly becoming who he was with New York.
Yeah, the speed, fastball edge rusher that when he has his hand in the dirt can do a lot of things well, especially in the stunt game where they're running things up front, moving him around. That's where he excelled, and I think all of those guys are starting to come into their own up front and just continue to play the youth. That's really what has been working for you, man. And the defensive line, who were you going to take off the field is my question. And on the inside too, you have all of the parts working right now. Linebackers working, safeties working. Why would you want to move around the feng shui of the room when it's
I'm not
all
touching that unit. They are clicking on all cylinders, And yes, I'm not saying you don't try to go for it this year and be aggressive. Like, they can win a Super Bowl this year. But at the same time, this isn't 2018 where you're trying to maximize a window with the oldest roster in football. This isn't even 2022 where you have, we said this on the show the other day, where you have all these expiring 1-year deals. This entire defense is locked up for a while and they're young. So yeah, I don't want to touch this rotation at any position like you just said. And again, we have a 3rd-round pick that I want to see on the field and they can't find snaps for him. So you could never have enough pass rushers narrative, I think, is actually incorrect, and it drives me nuts, especially during draft season. I hear that thrown around all the time.
I'm somebody who has said it on this show, and I will definitely own up to that, but to an extent. Like, you can never have enough of them within the 6 spots on the roster.
Correct.
Like, you're not going to start to cut guys and just have all of these players on the field, because you're not going to be able to. Like, you're going to take one of your defensive backs off the field to play more down linemen. I think Vic Fangio has figured out his strategy. Once again, he said it the last 2 weeks that he is fine and he doesn't expect a move to be made.
And Fangio doesn't lie, by the way.
He does not lie.
That's one thing we've learned.
If there's one thing about this Eagles team, don't overthink it. Like, don't get into that conspiracy element with it. Like, they're not smart enough to do that.
But it's true.
I totally get it, man. It's like, oh, Bryce Huff, does he have this injury, so they want to trade him out of town? No, that's not what it is. Vic Fangio told you that he liked him. Howie Roseman, he'll tell you that he loves trades, and he did exactly that in the offseason. Nick Sirianni, well, that's a different story. But at the end of the day, you got to be happy with the direction of this roster. Moving back to 2018 for 1 second, we had a lot of questions with why it did not work. I would say a large majority of the questions and the outcome would have been answered if they let the young guys play. And you're finally seeing
Good
that.
point.
This is a young athletic league, and the young athletic players are making good plays the last 4 weeks.
And that's why the Eagles have won 4 straight games at 6-2. A big win on Sunday. Barely made it out alive, but a win's a win, 28-23 over the Jacksonville Jaguars. Who shined the brightest in that win? Stock up coming up next right here on Locked On Eagles. This episode of the Locked On Eagles podcast is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is a new feature. It's called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Game Time also has a panoramic view you can see of your seat in the app before you buy. They have their lowest price guarantee. They'll credit you 110% of the difference if you find lower price tickets on other platforms. And it's not just for sports, theater, comedy, concert, it's all that and more. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the app, create an account, use our code LOCKEDONNFL. You'll get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create that account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time.
We're also brought to you by America's #1 sports book, and that is FanDuel. And right now, new customers can bet $5 and get a $150 bonus bet if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get the hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. So if you get that hunch that Jalen Hurts is going to get another anytime touchdown, or Saquon Barkley is just going to continue to pop off in 2024, just visit FanDuel.com today to join, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
All right, time now for stock up. After a 28-23 win over the Jacksonville Jaguars, the Eagles are now 6-2. And Gino, I think we got to start it the way we normally do with the quarterback, but not just Jalen Hurts. Stock up to the entire passing attack. And it was frustrating for weeks. We were watching the passing game be pretty much, and you could debate this, but I think it was the most inconsistent part of the team from a personnel perspective and coaching. And that's frustrating considering you have the most talent in that area and the most resources invested in the passing game. Well, the last few weeks, that has not been the case, and that's mainly because of Jalen Hurts. I mean, I think you would agree. There were some bright moments for Jalen last year, but wouldn't you say the last 2 weeks, it's by far the best he's looked since 2022? I mean, he looks so in control.
In terms of consistency, this is probably a top 2 or 3 game stretch from Jalen Hurts.
Fair. Even from 2022 stretches, you could probably say that, yeah.
And this is one of those things when it comes to an evolution of a quarterback that you want to see. You want to see them string really good pockets of action together over multiple weeks. And I think we have seen that from Jalen Hurts. And it all starts, Lou, with one thing he was not doing well early in the season, protecting the football.
Yep.
He has been flawless.
Still, what, 0 turnovers since the bye, right? In 4 games?
Yes, sir. 12 touchdowns, 0 turnovers. That's efficient football.
And the ball's coming out quick, right? I mean, I feel like he's just so much more decisive. I really think this under the center play action Kellen Moore style has unlocked that next level of Jalen's game.
And I think it really stems from having to mesh the ideologies across these two offenses, where Nick's offense, it was kind of that downfield element where obviously Avonte, obviously AJ Smith really dominate, and figuring out a way to give Jalen Hurts a little bit more time for that to develop, but at the same time utilizing things pre-snap and behind the line of scrimmage, which make Jalen Hurts' job that much easier. How many times, Lou, have we seen Jalen Hurts pre-snap and then post-snap change where he is going, go through his progressions? If you want to continue to say at this point that Jalen Hurts doesn't know how to read a field, you are not watching the tape. Go and download NFL Pro. It's $9.99 a month. You can watch every single snap. He has been unbelievably efficient with the football in his dropbacks over the last 4 weeks, Lou. Decisive, accurate, aggressive, not reckless, aggressive.
Yes, that's the thing is he's not, it's like 2022 where he's not being Sam Bradford. He's pushing the ball down the field. He's been the best deep ball passer in the league this year, in my opinion, especially over the last month.
And the numbers back it up too.
Right. And at the same time, like you're saying, it's mistake-free football. I mean, the guy has been surgical on third down. He's completing 72% of his passes since the bye. And like you said, like the numbers back it up. Since the bye, he is second in EPA per play, number 2 in success rate, third in completion percentage over expectation. Yards per attempt, he's second. He has the 5th highest touchdown percentage, the 3rd highest passer rating. I mean, on 10-plus yard passes, he's 20 of 29 since the bye, 500 yards and 5 touchdowns. There's 1,000 stats I could throw out here just from his passing that are unbelievable. But I will say, I think of all of this, the mobility returning, that I think is what really has brought back 2022 Jalen Hurts, because he has looked extremely explosive the last 2 games especially.
When you can play 12 on 10, adding a +1 on the offense, and creating a negative differential for the defense where one guy is always going to be in conflict, that was not able to happen when Jalen Hurts was a true stand in the pocket, RG3 after his knee blew out type of quarterback, going back to that discussion that we had a couple weeks ago. Now, there's no questions if he's injured. I don't know if he was ever injured. I just think he was hesitant.
I think, like we talked about the one day, he was hesitant and being just far more cautious about like when to push that into the next gear.
Remember the San Francisco game last year when he gets knocked down and he looks to the sideline where he shrugs his shoulders and he just didn't have the answers? That was the moment his confidence broke. Whatever happened after the bye week, that meter is full. His confidence meter is at its highest. I think one throw over the last 4 weeks embodies that, Lou. The Avonte Smith one-handed grab in the back of an end zone. The precision, the trust, the ability to put that ball where only Avonte Smith could get it in the back of an... That is a pros throw through and through. He has that glimmer in his eye again.
Yeah.
He knows he is one of the better quarterbacks in the National Football League.
He completed a career-high 4 deep passes of 20-plus air yards against Jacksonville, 127 yards, 2 touchdowns. He also finished the game with a plus 11.1 completion percentage over expected. He joined Jared Goff as the only other quarterback to have 4 games with a completion percentage over expected of over 10% this season. I mean, and props to Jalen. Like, I think he deserves so much credit for bouncing back after the bye. But, you know, like Kellen Moore, it really, you can see the Kellen Moore effect. And I'm getting a little nervous that if he continues to cook like this, you're going to need to hire another play caller next year. I mean, look at what he did with Saquon Barkley. He finally unlocked boss mode Saquon with the passing game. I'm getting nervous that Kellen's cooking a little bit too much right now.
I would slow down on that. I would wait a little bit. I mean, we still got to see how things progress throughout the season, but
it doesn't take much for a team to hire an offensive mind as their head coach, man.
It took Nick Sirianni a little bit, and he did this exact same thing with Shane Steichen, and it took about 7 games into the season back in 2020 for him to say, okay, maybe my offensive coordinator can actually call the plays. I think you were starting to see that more and more over the last couple weeks, where that Kellen Moore element mixed with the good stuff, because you have to get, I know we're very hard on Nick. The draws, the downfield stuff, a lot of that stems from what
those
they
counter
did.
reads last game were awesome.
Yes, when they run the draws with the counter on
I
there,
love that.
They have to do that, because they ran a draw later in the game where there was no read on it, and they kind of dialed in on him really quickly. But that element stems from what they started doing to get Jalen confidence back in 2020, and all of those little things, all of those little pillars that he's continued to develop, they're all stacking on top of each other. And this under center play action, that's just another one of those attributes that Jalen Hurts is learning. And now that he's multiple, Lou, and one of the areas that I don't think we're giving him enough credit, that people were killing him for in the offseason, what he's doing against the blitz, you can't blitz Jalen Hurts. You cannot blitz Jalen Hurts.
And the problem is, Gino, if you only rush 4, this is like the best offensive line in football. I mean, stock up to the entire line, but the right side was just cooking on Sunday. Lane Johnson and Mekhi Becton. Lane did not allow a single pressure against a good front that had Joshua Hines-Allen, Trayvon Walker. Mekhi Becton was the highest graded lineman in all of football on Sunday. I mean, that's the problem, is if you don't blitz Jalen and he's cooking you on the blitz, like, you almost just have no shot of getting to him. And that's just unfair considering the weapons that he has defined.
And his escapability out of the pocket recently, stepping up, stepping into the rush.
I know. I
lane.
wanted that touchdown for him, the Johnny Wilson one where he pushed off, because he stepped up in a pocket that was getting crowded around him, climbed the ladder, and delivered a throw. I wish it counted.
But you're seeing those things, Lou.
Yeah, it's very encouraging. Yeah.
Where we were waiting to see, can he grow in that area? And we were having questions, and people were getting hard on him. This is the next evolution. See him develop week by week, game by game, throw by throw. You're seeing that. You're seeing the true maturation of Jalen Hurts. And I don't think we are overstating this. I don't think we're even hyperbolic about this. I think, if anything, he continues not to get enough credit from outside. You're looking at, like, CJ Stroud was getting kinged as like the next upcoming great young quarterback. Like, he's been okay. Jordan Love, okay. Give Jalen his flowers, people. Like, he's a really good young quarterback who had a rough first 4 stretch.
Yeah, I'm the first one to jump on that guy when things aren't going well. He has played elite football and has
exceptional football.
Quieted pretty much all of my concerns that I've had over the last month. So stock up to Jalen, Kellen Moore, Saquon Barkley getting involved in the passing game. The entire passing offense, the line as well, just humming right now for sure. On defense, Gino, stock up to Nakobe Dean and Zack Baun. I don't think I could tell you the last time, I don't know if I've ever seen this as an Eagles fan, where in one game, 2 linebackers had a pick. And that was the biggest concern I had about, I think I knew the strengths of Nakobe Dean and Zack Baun heading into this year. I was very, very concerned about the coverage issues. Like, I thought there were going to be liabilities in coverage, and they couldn't keep both of them out there the majority of the time. They have been elite in coverage, especially the last 2 games.
What do we see happen again first? Saquon Barkley hurdles somebody backwards again, or to see both linebackers get an interception?
I put money on
Saquon,
game. Man. Like, that was such an awesome, like, nice, like, rare treat. I mean, and both picks were unbelievable. Baun's diving to the ground to pick it off Dean hitting ETN, popping the ball up in the air. And then Nakobe Dean's pick, you know, I told somebody on X the other day, I was screaming, I'm like, Q finally got an interception. I saw a 7 on the jersey.
Yeah, you said that on the show the other day, too.
Yeah, and full extension. I mean, just incredible plays.
This is another story. I think a 2-part story. One, both have to do with development. One, be willing to continue to dip into the linebacker market until you find a guy that clicks. And I finally think they are happy with that guy, and they're going to extend Zack Baun.
I hope so, man. I'm knocking on wood.
2, year 3 truly is the year to tell if guys work. And Nakobe Dean, year 3, Lou, it's like Charmander, Charmeleon, Charizard. This is the Charizard.
I was ready to give
Dean.
up, man. Like the first few weeks of the year, I was like, I don't think that Nakobe Dean breakout's coming. Him and Nolan Smith, I was ready to give up.
It's here and then some. Against the run, they're both. Zack Baun made so many impressive plays where he is the first to the ball. He doesn't miss tackles. He does not miss.
I have a stat to back that up for
all year.
I've got a stat to back that up for you. He had 7 of the Eagles' 17 quote-unquote defensive stops, which result in a negative EPA for the offense. 7 of the 17.
You have to sign him. And you have to sign both of them. I'm looking at this, Lou, in terms of a hockey perspective, where in hockey, there's an old adage that some coaches like to go by, that they don't like to set lines where they pick 3 guys. They like to set duos and then add one person into that rotation. I think you got your duo. Like, you have your Leon Draisaitl to your Connor McDavid, not to like the best players in the league, but to an expectation that you have 2 guys that in symmetry work super well together. They work very well together. They play well off of each other, and they fit what Vic Fangio wants to do to a T. Zack Baun is a do-it-all cog in the machine, a second-level version of Cooper DeJean to an extent, where you can kind of deploy him all over the football field. And now you're seeing him being able to cover into the deep third. I've never seen linebacker play like that in terms of coverage in my tenure watching the Eagles.
This is better than 2022, I think. And I might go as far as saying it's better than what we saw from in 2017, Nigel Bradham and Michael Kendricks.
Oh, in terms of coverage, for sure. But in terms of like linebacker play, like you go to the trot days, like you'll never see
you're not talking
horses like that, man, coming downhill. But in terms of modern day linebacker play, we haven't seen this, man.
And again,
we were
that's
watching
surprising.
Shaq Leonard last year. Did we forget?
And again, that is surprising to me. I really thought coverage was going to be an issue, and it's not been. And Dean emphasized taking the ball away. Like, this defense after the bye wanted to get takeaways. Mm-hmm. If you include those like 4th down stops from Cooper DeJean the last few weeks, they have 6 turnovers in the last 2 games. That was kind of, for the offense, the last shoe to drop was Saquon getting involved more creatively, especially in the passing game. On defense, Gino, it was definitely takeaways, and that can't be done without the defensive line. Stock up to Jalen Carter and company. Jalen had quietly one of the most elite games I've seen in a while from a defensive tackle. A career-high 6 pressures. 3 of them came against double teams. You didn't see like that sack highlight play, but he was a monster on Sunday.
There's a play where if you go on NFL Pro and watch his 6 pressures, where he's going through the B gap and the lineman gets in front of him, and he doesn't change his weight. He stays perfectly extended with his arms, and he kind of shuffles back across the offensive lineman. The offensive lineman can struggle to get his feet. Jalen Carter's just sitting there, rips off of that on a counter move and gets to the quarterback. He is so good in 2-gap situations, 1-gap situations, getting to the quarterback, defending the run. He might not show up in the box score when it comes to the sacks, but other guys are making plays because of Jalen Carter. Mm-hmm. His counter moves are crazy. When his initial move doesn't work, he just continues to learn more and more. And there was a clip that Baldy always does. I don't know why he has this like love for Jalen Carter. I mean, he's a really good player, but he was talking to him on the field prior to the game, and you could see Jalen Carter intently like listening and learning and wanting to get better each and every day. And I think that might be his best trait. He might be the guy that when that flip switch, he can get off his rocker a little bit, but he knows everything that's going on the football field. He is processing things at such a high rate that I don't think we are seeing, and we won't ever see unless we're in the film room learning from him. But you could see it on tape, man. Like, he's diagnosing plays before they happen. He's understanding how the offensive lineman is going to set against him, and he's using their leverage against him. I could talk about this kid all day long, and it's only his 2nd season, man.
I mean, Milton Williams now is PFF's 6th highest graded interior pass rusher. He was the main reason Josh Sweat got that first sack. I saw a couple big plays from Moro Ijoma in the second half, late in the 4th quarter. He had a couple nice pressures. Yet quietly, again, going back to the trade deadline discussion, there was no reason to add another lineman at all to take snaps away from this.
He's your alpha.
Yeah. Jalen Carter's your alpha. And that's what we said in the offseason was you can get by with this edge group if you have a bunch of Bs, B pluses, when you have an A+ guy like Jalen on the inside. So stock up to Jalen Carter and the defensive line as well. Another strong performance against the Jaguars. We'll wrap up the show coming up next with Stock Down. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. This episode of the Locked On Eagles podcast is brought to you by BetterHelp Online Therapy. This month, it's all about gratitude. The person you got to thank the most, yourself. It's something hard to remind ourselves of doing often. We're trying our best to make sense of everything in the world, a crazy world, and that's not easy. Here's a reminder to send some thanks to the people in your life, including yourself. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Let the gratitude flow with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. Once again, that's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon for 10% off your first month of online therapy. All right, we're wrapping up this Tuesday edition of Locked On Eagles with Stock Down after a 28-23 win over the Jaguars. And, Gino, again, a lot of positives. And we didn't even really get to talk about, for time's sake, Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean.
Can we talk about them really quick?
Yeah, hold on. We got to talk about Q and Coop. I mean, just when you don't hear anything from a corner like you did, there was not a single highlight I could pull from Mitchell's tape. That's a very, very good thing. Teams are not even targeting. They average 6 targets a game before the bye week targeting Mitchell. Since then, they're only targeting him 3 times a game. Like, they are not even trying 27.
I went through all of 61 of his snaps, I believe, yesterday on film, and I'm watching him.
I did that this morning, actually.
This is getting boring because he's so good, and, like, he's so technically good.
But, you know, the only way to
see
him do anything, you got to pull up the tape because there's no highlights.
Yes, exactly. It's like watching... I love watching safety film, but a lot of the time when you watch a safety, there's a whole lot of nothing going on, but that's not the worst thing because he's in the right position. But then I was watching Quinyon's tape, and I'm like, get Reed Blankenship and Cooper DeJean off my screen because I can't tell them apart, but 33, not 32, was unreal in coverage, Lou. I have this on the screen, and it's been playing the entire time we're recording, is this clip on 3rd and 5 in the second quarter where it's Quinyon Mitchell on the outside, Cooper DeJean in the slot. They're both lined up within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage. The outside wide receiver motions into the slot. Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean communicate that change. And Cooper DeJean backpedals, shuffles, and gets right back connected to the sideline and makes a huge breakup for his second time in 2 weeks. And another one that was very similar in the exact same setup. Cooper DeJean, I tweeted out a thread from our Locked On Eagles account. This is another play where he's about 5-6 yards off. Backpedal, drops his hips, opens up his hips, and gets into full stride to take the slot fade down the field nearly 50 yards, and he's literally in this guy's hip pocket. He is so good, and these guys, I hope they're here for the next 15 years. I hope you hear their name in Eagles lore for the next 15 years.
It's getting like the discourse with Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown, where I don't know what else to say about how good they are. Coop is now the 3rd highest graded corner over the last 3 games. I mean, another clutch 4th down stop that you were talking about. Quinyon Mitchell was targeted 1 time. He allowed 1 catch for 11 yards, and that was more based on scheme. They were just playing super deep. The last 4 games, he's only allowed 8 catches for 73 yards. I mean, again, if the picks were there for either one of these guys, even Cooper DeJean, I know he didn't play the first month of the year. If they start getting interceptions, I think one of these guys could win Rookie of the Year. I don't know if, again, without the turnovers, if they can do it, even though I still think they deserve to have a really good shot at it, especially Q. But if they start getting turnovers, they're both playing at a Rookie of the Year pace. Maybe even All-Pro, you could make the case.
I don't know if they can get the numbers that would make Jared Verse, who's having a really good rookie season.
And they're biased towards pass rushers anyway for that award.
Exactly. So. If you affect the quarterback, that's exactly the way that they go with it. But I truly don't care as long as they are the best rookie tandem in the last 20 years to come into Philadelphia, which is exactly what we were talking about when they made those picks 20 years ago, it was the kind of exact same discussion. I mean, I would assume it was the exact same discussion. I was 10 years old at the time, but where you now have two young defensive backs who are going nowhere. To know that, Lou, when's the last time we had security in the back of our mind at this position?
I've never
with a young, bright future.
Yeah, it's literally never happened for me.
No, you've never seen it. You have
Correct.
never. We tried it with Namdi. We've tried it with picks like Nate Allen. Like these guys, it's a hit. You already know that they are a hit.
Mm-hmm. I completely agree. One thing we know as well in the secondary, Gino, Avonte Maddox cannot be on the field anymore.
Ever again.
Stock down to Avonte, and I feel bad for Avonte. I think he's a good dude. He's had some great years for the Eagles, including the Super Bowl run of 2022. But the guy doesn't play a snap. Vic Fangio throws him in there on the final drive, down 5, or up 5. You got to close this thing out. You put him one-on-one with Evan Ingram, and instantly he gets a pass interference call. Why they're not putting Kelee, Ringo, or Sidney Brown out there, and they're earning it. I mean, Sidney Brown forces a fumble on the punt return early in the game. Kelee, Ringo recovers it. Ringo took that one extra point back for a 2-point conversion earlier this year. They're earning snaps on defense, and I don't understand the logic behind putting Avonte out there over them. If there was one thing I wanted to see at the deadline, it was that Howie ships him off somewhere else.
It was almost like a Saturday Night Live skit where you're shuffling the personnel out.
I couldn't even finish the text to you.
The back of his neck and like threw him into the game.
I was trying to text you, oh my God, no, like Avonte's in the game and he's on Ingram, and I couldn't even get the play off.
I think I said this on the show the other day too. Like I thought it was Kelee Ringo because I'm like, oh, I saw the dreadlocks, obviously.
Yeah.
I'm like, I see the 2 on the jersey. I'm like, oh, nice decision. And then I'm like, hang on, that guy's a little bit shorter.
It would have made more
Ringo.
sense against a tight end, right? I mean,
yeah, I was like, that's a great move, Vic. Like perfect situation, but match him up against a receiving threat at the tight end position. There's a quote, you want to retire before the game retires you. I think Avonte, at his days in Philly, maybe not re-signing him back was probably the better move.
For sure. And we'll get more into Nick Sirianni tomorrow, Gino, but there is one thing I want to talk about. Nick, obviously a stock down coaching day against Jacksonville, and we harped a lot on the 4th down decisions, 2-point conversion versus extra point, all of those in-game decisions. But one thing that stood out to me after the game, what Lane Johnson said, was that they lost concentration in the second half, and it's part of why they didn't. He said it should have been a 40-plus point performance from the offense. And that, again, is concerning about Nick, because when your team is not focused and they got too comfortable, a lot of that comes straight from a head coach that also was coaching comfortable. Like, he was coaching like that game was wrapped up in the second quarter, and he was making decisions like that. And I think that rubbed off on his team. Like, they got complacent in the second half. So not even like removing the in-game decisions about play calling and to go for it or to not. He got comfy, and then I think his entire team got comfortable too.
I'm not too much of a person to read in to too many things. But one thing I do notice, watch how much farther, and go back to last year, the guys stand listening to Nick Sirianni in the locker room after a game now. And then when a player speaks, just go and look.
Interesting.
Just go and look. Because BG the other day after his 200th game, those guys were right on top of him. Like right there listening to him. Nick, they're like 10 feet back. I don't know.
Put on the tinfoil hat.
I'm not that guy. I'm not that guy. But no, I will say one thing that I don't think this is revisionist history at all. This has been a problem for them that they don't finish games ever since Nick has been here.
Yeah.
I mean, the Super Bowl, like you let your foot off the gas for a microcosm of a second. That's part of what you need to do as the head coach. And you aren't the offensive play caller. And one of the things that drives me crazy, it's like, oh, if this will, out of anything, you can't blame Nick for this game. It's like, when can you blame Nick? Like, we're moving the goalposts for him. People are moving the goalposts for Nick Sirianni. Like, those decisions.
They're saying he needs to delegate even more responsibilities. Like, now he shouldn't make 4th and 3rd down decisions. Then what is he doing?
What is he doing?
And he's not keeping this team mentally prepared, because Lane Johnson, outside of Brandon Graham, your most tenured player, your biggest leader on this football team, that's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer, said, yeah, we got too comfortable. And
Second
I'm
time
watching
in a week that Lane Johnson has spoken out against this offense.
And that's the thing, is like, it's nice to know that players have the voice in that culture where they can make change by saying, hey, we want to run the ball. We want under center looks. Like they can hold players only
coach
meetings.
Not get the grasp that that's what they want. Like,
but why also,
there's a disconnect there.
And that's the thing is, like, if a player feels like they need to do that as often as they do in Philadelphia, that's a problem. Again, I like that they have that power, but the fact that they have to use Lane has to use that power as much as he does, and Jalen and Brandon and all these guys, like, that's an issue. They shouldn't have to do that all the time.
Not to get political, but they always use that term in like some comedy movies, like, oh, call your congressman. It's like, Lane Johnson's the congressman that's going to the president, like, Nick, like, we need to change this.
And Gino, Lane's not going to be here forever, you know?
He's not going to be our Mitch McConnell in office until he's 80 years old. Like, this game has a lifespan, and the one thing that we were hoping, and we're never going to know like the true inner workings of it, but like without Kelce, without Fletch, maybe things do get out of check a little bit more than they should. And maybe they're starting to realize that maybe the players are realizing we have to hold ourselves more accountable, because Nick ain't like, I'm sorry. You got to do a lot if you're Nick Sirianni to get me to buy back into what you're selling, my friend.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Luckily, everything else for the Eagles right now, clicking on all cylinders, a lot more stock ups than stock downs. We'll move forward. We have the Cowboys matchup coming up next. No Dak Prescott, potentially no CeeDee Lamb. Got a show for you tomorrow on that matchup, crossover Thursday, all that and more. Thanks so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. For Gino Camilleri, I'm Lou DiBiase signing off. Thanks as always for downloading, watching, and listening, and let's go Birds.
Fly, Eagles, fly.